may have heard that when you're speaking, you should never have notes. And there's something to that. There's a problem with notes, and people kind of bury their head in notes. They get so involved in notes, they're so focused on the notes, they don't focus on the people that they're talking to. And that's a problem. If you're standing up in front of people and you got your whole head buried in notes and nobody can see you or your eyes or anything like that, there's no audience connection. The whole idea about no notes simply means that if you're staring at notes, you aren't paying attention to the audience. If you're ignoring the audience, then there's no connection there. There's no real benefit. It's just somebody in front reading stuff. And eye contact is so important because eye contact means you start to have that feeling of person-to-person conversation. An important person-to-person conversation. And it's crucial, that person-to-person conversation, when you're giving a talk or a speech, because that makes people feel like you really get them, like you're in touch with them, like you're understanding what they're thinking and what they're feeling. People feel that you need them, you're interested in them, when you have personal conversation, looking at them eye to eye. So that's kind of the whole idea about, oh, you don't have notes because that's going to just get in the way. And there's something to that. It's just that there are times when you may need notes. When you may actually need notes to use during your speech. And that doesn't need to be a deal breaker or an issue, and there aren't that many times. There are several times when notes are very, very helpful. And understanding when you need notes and when you don't need notes is pretty crucial, because in general, yeah, sure, don't use notes. Don't use notes, get up there, just talk from the heart, talk to you have to talk about, that'll be fine. But in several situations, you may discover, wait a minute, I think I'm going to need notes here. In that case, go ahead, use them. Just understand what those situations are and when you really can apply them, so you use notes as little as possible. The goal when you get up there, if you can, is just use notes as little as possible. Maybe you need a little hint here and there, maybe have some sort of bullet points. But in general, so much better just to talk and communicate and get things out that way, as opposed to be staring at notes, because then you make audience eye contact, you make that person-to-person eye contact, and it really makes a difference. It's what makes conversation so special. When you're talking to someone back and forth, there's a natural flow there in the conversation that's enjoyable and special, and that's what it's all about. So if you are using notes, make sure that you're using notes and still keeping contact with the audience. In fact, you use notes, a good idea is to just dip down, read your notes in silence, and look up, make eye contact with the person in the audience, speak to that person, say what you've got to say, and then look down. You've got a teleprompter, of course, it's a lot easier to keep looking at the audience the whole time you're talking. It's great if you have a teleprompter. If you don't, just look down. Make sure your notes are at a decent level so you can look down and keep having that connection with the audience. So that's how you use notes and the way you're going to use notes when you get out there, but it doesn't want to tell you why to use notes. So here are some situations when notes would be definitely worthwhile. You're going to find out what those are. And understand that there's very specific situations, not a lot of them, but they will require you using notes. It's a situation where you really need to have the notes, where the notes are important, where the notes are useful, and the notes just make your speech go. Sometimes, hey, no notes is great. Other times, a note is really necessary, really required. And that's what you're going to find out today, the time when that note is necessary or required, when it's like saying, okay, all right, in this situation, definitely want a note. But a few situations like that, only a few. Once you understand what those are, you can start using notes during that time, and the rest of the time you don't need to use notes. But when you need a note, you need to know. Now the first situation you need to use notes is kind of at the beginning. It's really at the beginning of things, right at the very beginning. You've got kind of an idea in your head, you're sort of working on it, you're kind of sketching it out, and then as you get these ideas, you start writing things down. If you haven't written things down when you're speaking, it's a good idea to write just ideas, jot them down, bullet points. And as you write these ideas down, you're jotting them down, you think, okay, yeah, I got some ideas here. And then you put them together, and then you start writing sentences. Write out your whole speech. What you're going to be talking about, what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be saying up there. Write it out, word for word. Maybe you're going to use it as the words, but just write the thing out. The challenge is, okay, you got a new speech, and you've written it out, but you haven't got it memorized. What do you do? Use your notes. If it's a new speech, use your notes. It's okay to use the notes. It's a brand new speech. You're working on it. You kind of got to go back and forth. You're trying different things out. You haven't really flushed out and said, this is exactly what I'm going to say. It just kind of shifts around in your head. It shifts around when you talk about it. Then it's okay to use notes. Hey, it's all right. You're just beginning to give your speech. So the first time you give a brand new speech, go ahead, use notes when you're giving it in front of other people to try it out. Won't be the official time you're doing the speech, but you're just trying it out in front of a few people, in front of a group, so what's your feedback on it? It's okay to use notes in those situations. Got a new speech. Now, ideally, before you actually give the speech in whatever situation you're going to give it, you practice and worked it over again. And a way to do that is simply just do 5 to 7 minutes a day. So here's a 35-minute speech. Every day, just do 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, week 1, every day you do 5 to 7 minutes. So if you have a 30-minute speech, say, that would be 6 weeks. So you have 6 weeks doing 5-minute chunks of that speech every week. But that's the big thing. It's just keep it. The big thing is to keep it small. The big thing is to keep it small. In other words, just do 5 minutes. Go through your speech once, 5 minutes. Boom, done, stop, that's it. No more. That day, that's all you do. The next day, go through your speech again, 5 minutes. Sit and stop. So every day you run through your speech beginning to end. Now in the beginning you're going to need to use notes, but after a while, after week 3, after day 3, day 4, it starts to get in your head. You're like, okay, I think I know what I'm talking about. It stops being new, and then you don't need to use the notes. Then you can put the notes down. Put them somewhere handy, so in case you need to refer to them, you can. But go through your speech without the notes. After 4 or 5 times every day, you've been practicing that speech 4 times, that's 20 minutes right there doing the speech. You should have some idea what you're talking about, what you're going to say up there. It's not new. So put the notes aside. Try it, run through it, and see if you stumble a bit. It's all right. Go back, check your notes. But then, keep on working. So you've done it a week, and then the next week you do that speech. So you do the speech 1 week, and the next week, 7 days later, you do that same speech. Then you don't use notes. By that time, you've gone over your speech, you know it, you understand it, you've gone all the way through it. So you don't really need to use notes. Now there's a situation where that doesn't apply at all. I'll get to that in a little bit. But for now, if you know how to memorize things, you've done things before, you're fine, you don't need to use notes. You've done it every day, 5 to 7 minutes, your 5 to 7 minute part of your speech, every day. By the time you get to the 7th day, a week later, no. The first time you do it, sure, first time you do it, you're sketching different things out, it's all new. You're working on it, you're kind of putting it all together. Yeah, use notes. Use notes there, but after that 3rd, 4th week, you're going through, you're plowing through, it's like, okay, I know this stuff, I understand it, then no notes are required. Don't use notes, just put them away, forget about it. You need to refer them back and say, what exactly do I see here, what's my point, but then even after a while, that won't matter. Because after that, next week, you don't use notes, then just keep going back to the speech again and again, 5 to 7 minutes, and you'll have it down. So if your speech is new, it's okay to use notes. until you know it better. All right, so one situation you use notes is if you've got a new speech. Just a brand new speech. You got it there, fine, it's new, great, you got to use notes. Understandable, perfectly understandable. In that situation, you need to use notes. Great. But there's another situation you need to use notes, and it can be particularly challenging. A little bit difficult. Because for some people, they're thinking, if I'm going to give a speech, I'm going to have to use notes. Because that's just the way it is. And there's something about these people that this requires them that they need to use these notes. And that won't change. That's just a fix. Every time they get up there, they're going to need to use the notes because of this thing that's going on with them. That is if you have something medical. If you have something medical going on so you're unable to remember things for long periods of time, then yeah, you're going to need to use notes. So, for example, if you have muscular dystrophy or some sort of bizarre kind of fading away of your mind, well then yeah, you're gonna need to use notes. It's silly to hope that, oh, maybe I hope I'll remember something up there, when you know medically it's not the way it works. Medically, it's a challenge in remembering that it's not only a challenge, it's not possible. It's not happening. It's not up here. There's something where things just don't stick. In that case, you've got to use notes. And not only use notes for that one time, but use notes over and over again. But then that goes back to how to use notes. And the key thing about using notes is that the note shouldn't become a barrier between you and the audience. As mentioned earlier, when you're doing these notes, even if you have to use notes, fine, great. Look at the note in silence, and then look directly at the audience. Unless you have a teleprompter or find a way to display the notes like at audience level. Some people find a way that they've got like tables in the front where they're presenting, and they can literally lay out their whole speech written out by hand on sheets of paper, and they just kind of read the thing all the way across. That's another way to do things. But as you're speaking, remember, it's important to speak to people. So you can read in silence and then talk to people. Now, if you're in a situation you can't remember something between when you look at it and you look at the audiences, then you probably got a situation in which you really can't be giving speeches at all. So you get to look at something and you can't. Once you stop looking at it, you can't remember it. Okay, that's probably really, really big problem. So all it takes is about 1-2 seconds of memory. Look at it, say it. Look at it, say it. That's it. Okay? All right. Talk. Talk. Check your notes. Talk to the audience. That's it. That's all you need to do. The key thing is to keep talking to the audience, creating this feeling of a conversation. Even if it's important, even if you have the notes. You can have the notes in your hand, but still looking at the audience. Really important not to talk to your hand. People talking to their hand are not interesting. The audience doesn't care about it. It's really obnoxious. And after a while, the audience starts fidgeting. Are you fidgeting yet? So don't talk to your hand. You heard the expression talk to the hand? Don't do that. Just talk to the audience. And it just takes a second. Just glance down, look at the notes, talk to the audience. Talk. That's it. Once you start practicing this, you'll get it. And if you're using notes, it's fine. If you've got a medical reason to use notes, perfectly understandable. That's the way it works. You've got to use the notes. But if you're using the notes, you've got to connect with the audience. Connect with the audience, give that face-to-face, eye-to-eye, really, really important. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Just talk for a bit, okay, now I go back, and talk for a little bit more. Now there will be kind of this bobbing head thing up and down. Try to minimize that. Maybe just put your eyes down and then look up. But the idea is simple. Keep that connects with the audience. So another situation where you may need to use notes is something is medical. So now you know you maybe need to use notes. You've got a new speech. Never done it before, new speech. Okay, you need notes. And you have something medical you've done before. You may need to use notes. So these things are pretty straightforward. Okay, new speech, still going through the motions, fine, but once I get it down the next week, I really shouldn't use notes because I'm doing the speech day after day after day. And medical, all right? Medical. I've got this medical reason I gotta use notes. When using notes, I'm going to look in silence at the notes, then talk directly to the audience. Talk, talk, talk. Talk, talk, talk. Talk, talk, talk. Talk, talk, talk. Try to minimize the head bobbing, but use the notes, talk to the audience. However, there's one other situation which you may need to use notes, and you probably definitely do want to use notes, and that's in the word-for-word situation. Word for word. Some of you are great writers. You're just great writers. And the thing about it is, well, you can memorize word for word what you're saying. It is possible. People do it in plays all the time. It can take a little bit more work because your mind naturally makes connections. So when you think about something, it'll remind you of something else, remind you of something else. When you have a memorized speech, very often you don't memorize it word for word. You only kind of get the gist of it, and then that's what you talk about, kind of the general gist, the idea of things. But if you're a writer, and you want to make absolutely certain that every perfect gem of your wording is getting out there, and you don't particularly plan to study how to become an actor and doing acting things, that means that you're going to have to read that speech. To make sure every word gets out there, every word gets communicated, every word gets communicated you want it to, you've got to read the speech, connect to the audience. But the same thing like with a medical. You're reading the speech, just talk to the audience. Talk to the audience. Even here, even in something written down and formal, it's still nice to have it sound conversational. And conversational is a big word, but it simply means talking to the audience. That's the key thing. Conversation. Have a conversation with the audience. Your speech is a conversation with your audience, where the conversation goes back and forth. That's the key. Conversational, word for word, what you're saying, what you're about to say, what you've written down. Because if you're really good at writing, you get some really great stuff written down, fine. If you aren't an actor, well, it may be difficult to memorize your lines. So don't. Don't memorize, but go through it. However, know your speech. Even if you say, I'm going to read this thing out in front of the audience, read it through every day out loud. The whole speech, beginning just 5 to 7 minutes of that speech. It's like you talk the speech out loud every day if you're practicing it to memorize it. If you're not practicing to memorize it, talk it aloud, get it out there. Even if you have the speech in front of you. You want it word for word because things pop up when you're actually in the presentation that can throw off your concentration, and then you may skip a word, you may look in the wrong place, but if you're really familiar with the text, really familiar, even if you get a little off or if the notes fall and you're putting it back in order, even then you'll still keep that conversation going, keep that conversation happening with the audience. And that's the key in word for word. Yes, you want every word to get out there exactly the way you wrote it. It's really important. But in doing that, you still want to connect with the audience. You don't want to go into storytelling mode where all of a sudden the audience is just listening to you and that's it. There's still has to be some connection with the audience there. So they're not only listening, they're engaged, they're part of the action. You've got a piece of the action. You want to give your audience a piece of the action by allowing them to engage in the conversation, even in a word-for-word reading of the things that you have. This conversation opens up your speech. It opens it up, it makes you more confident, more certain of yourself. It really is a great way to get that speech across throughout having that conversation. So the final way of using notes is you use notes if you want to talk word for word about what you've written. While you'll often hear people say, oh, you shouldn't use notes, there are situations in which you may want to use notes and even have to use notes. First situation is just where you're in front of an audience and you've got something new. You actually aren't having the audience yet. You're going to work with the audience, but you're just practicing things. You're having something new. You want to try it with a test audience. This is about you're in front of that test audience and you're saying, I'm trying this thing, I'm going to do it, etc., but I want it, it's new, I'm not quite certain about it. So it's okay, you read it off. You got it all written off, you read up what you're reading, read to the audience. Silence, talk directly to the audience. So it's new, sure, fine. But new is defined as the first time you've written it down. Once you get it written down, normally, if you do it 5 to 7 days, every day, into the 7th day, a week, you should pretty much have it together and be ready to just talk about it. Unless there's something medical going on. For some medical reason, you're unable to get up there and to give that talk. You just can't remember it. It just doesn't sit in your head. Things just don't flow for some reason. And that medical reason stops you from really communicating at all without having something written down. Your mind just will go to different ideas and different thoughts. Well, yeah, in that case, you definitely need to have it written down. It's crucial because you want to get that idea across, you want to communicate it, you want to communicate in a way that the audience is going to get. But when you're doing that, still look inside the notes and talk directly to the audience. Because if you're in a situation where it takes you 1 or 2 seconds, you can't remember something after 1 or 2 seconds, you say it, you see it, that's a really big problem. Most likely you can look at something, remember it, talk to the audience. Key thing is not to look at a lot of things, like a huge line, just like look at 5 words. Say the 5 words. Then look at 5 more words. Say those 5 more words. That gets that conversation going, and it keeps the speech going. And then finally, with notes, you may need to use notes if you want a word-for-word speech, where you're really good at writing. You've got a great way with words and putting words together. You want to have every word come out exactly as you've done it. Now, if you're an actor, hey, that's easy. You do that all the time. It's called reading a script. No big deal. But if you're not an actor, you haven't developed those skills, it may be a little difficult to do everything word for word. Because your mind tends to expand, exaggerate, fill in, so you don't get quite the right word, you get something like it. But no, you don't want that. You want exactly word for word. Okay, in that case, you do the speech. But still, practice if you're memorizing it. Every day, read the speech through, beginning to end. After a week, I'll continue reading the speech. But try to read the speech more with a sense of connection to the audience. Again, look at silence, talk to the audience, and try to really get that speech going, really get it moving, really keep everything moving along. That's what you do if you have a word-for-word speech you want to get across. And that's what notes are. That's why you use notes and where you use notes. Now, if you don't have a new speech, if it's not a speech that you've done and it's something you've got something medical, you can't remember things, or you really don't want to do a word for word of your speech, then you don't need notes. Sure, when you're practicing it, okay, go through at the beginning, but then you're practicing it, by about a week you've got it down, you go out there, you can say it, you can give it, you can do it without the notes. Because notes can get a barrier between you and your audience. If you do need to use notes, that's okay. That's fine. Maybe it's new, something new you've got, something medical you've got, something word for word, but however you do it, even if you're using notes, make sure you're still connecting with the audience. That's the key. It's that conversational style. The audience is really going to pull people in, really get them involved, really get them thinking about what you're saying, what's going on, what's really all about. Get them really focus in on pondering all of that. That's key. So if you're going to use notes, use your notes well.